The 1980s fantasy genre had this beautiful, reckless energy,
I set out in search of the Stygian witches on my own.
where studios greenlit absolutely insane ideas with budgets they'd never see again,
No. We will ride with you as far as their shrine.
threw actors into dangerous situations with minimal safety protocols, and somehow created cult classics that defined a generation's fever dreams about swords, sorcery, and impractical armor. And few productions embodied that chaos better than one that kicked off with a bear mauling and wrapped with a Playboy spread designed to save the box office. Beastmaster follows Dar, this mystical warrior born from a cow after witches rip him from his mother's womb, who grows up discovering he can telepathically communicate with animals before his village gets massacred, and he sets off for revenge with a tiger, an eagle, and 2 thieving ferrets. What made Beastmaster feel uniquely 80s was its absolute sincerity about a hero whose superpower is talking to animals, treated with the same gravitas as Conan's sword-swinging brutality, wrapped in that sun-drenched California fantasy aesthetic where everything looked vaguely mythical but also suspiciously like hiking trails, an hour outside Los Angeles. Mark Singer formed genuine bonds with the trained animals on set, ferrets, eagle, Black Panther, which gave the film this authentic connection that CGI could never replicate. Though it also meant filming days became completely unpredictable when animals refused to cooperate and required endless patient takes. Singer became vocal about animal welfare during production, clashing with crew members less sensitive to the creature's needs, causing delays, but ultimately improving conditions in ways that reflected broader 80s concerns about ethics in filmmaking. Then there's Tanya Roberts, cast as Kiri specifically because producers wanted someone who'd pose for Playboy afterward, leading to her iconic freezing lake plunge for topless shots, followed months later by a full nude spread with lions and the dyed panther designed entirely to salvage box office disaster. The film bombed theatrically at just $14 million, but became the most aired movie in HBO history, playing so relentlessly on TBS that subscribers nicknamed the network the Beastmaster Station, turning financial failure into the kind of cultural penetration studios dream about. That transformation from flop to constant cable presence captured something essential about 80s fantasy. These films didn't need theatrical success when they could live forever in weekend afternoon time slots, becoming comfort food for a generation raised on channels that actually played movies instead of reality shows. Clash of the Titans transplanted Greek mythology into Ray Harryhausen's stop-motion workshop, where Perseus collects divine gifts from bickering Olympian gods, captures Pegasus, beheads Medusa, and petrifies the Kraken to save Princess Andromeda from becoming sea monster lunch. The film represented this fascinating collision between old Hollywood craftsmanship and emerging blockbuster sensibilities, where Harryhausen spent months animating creatures frame by painstaking frame, while producers worried about ratings and mass appeal, creating tension between artistic vision and commercial demands. Harry Hamlin locked himself in his trailer and went on strike when he discovered UK censors had rewritten the Medusa scene to avoid an X rating, changing Perseus from using his reflective shield mythologically correctly to just throwing it at her head, which Hamlin knew was completely wrong. Production halted while Hamlin refused to budge, and producers even cut electricity to his trailer, trying to force him out. But he gained crew support and eventually got the scene rewritten closer to actual mythology, showing how seriously 80s actors took these fantasy roles despite the camp. Laurence Olivier brought Shakespearean gravitas as Zeus while struggling with constant technical delays from stop-motion work, his presence lending legitimacy to a film about flying horses and mechanical owls that somehow balanced prestige casting with B-movie charm. What made Titans endure was its earnestness. Nobody winked at the camera or apologized for the camp, they just committed fully to mythological spectacle, in ways that feel refreshing compared to modern fantasy's constant need to undercut emotion with jokes. The film became Harryhausen's final stop-motion masterpiece, marking the end of an era right before digital effects would make his painstaking craft obsolete, giving it this poignant quality as the last gasp of a dying art form. Audiences loved the creatures, but were sometimes baffled by the tonal shifts between Olivier's dramatic weight and the goofy mechanical owl comic relief, creating this uniquely 80s blend of high and low art that wouldn't survive today's focus-tested homogeneity. Slave Girls Beyond Infinity adapts the most dangerous game for the space age. Escaped prisoners Doria and Tisa crash land on a jungle planet where their welcoming host Zed turns out to hunt humans for sport in a fortress decorated with previous victims' heads. The production became legendary for casting a mattress actress as lead Daria, then firing her 3 days into shooting when the director realized dramatic sci-fi acting might require different skills, creating mid-production chaos as Elizabeth Catan stepped in to spend weeks wearing metal bikinis in jungle heat. What made this quintessentially 80s was how it took classic pulp adventure and added space guns plus skimpy costumes, creating the exact formula that dominated direct-to-video sci-fi, where genre thrills mattered more than budget or polish. The small cast bonded intensely over brutal desert shooting conditions, finding humor and camaraderie essential for surviving extreme heat and punishing schedules on minimal budget, reflecting the passion over resources spirit driving many cult sci-fi productions. Creative conflicts erupted constantly between director and cast about tone, oscillating wildly between serious sci-fi adventure and campy comedy, resulting in improvised scenes and last-minute rewrites that gave the film its chaotic charm. Regional distributors panicked over bikini-clad violence, leading to aggressive editing or outright bans depending on which moral panic gripped that particular market, while parents groups targeted it as corrupting youth entertainment during peak video rental culture wars. Drive-in theaters and late-night cable embraced it as exactly the trashy fun mainstream venues rejected, finding audiences who genuinely loved campy genre blending without demanding high production values, which is precisely why it endures as comfort food for sci-fi fans raised on USA Up All Night programming. Barbarian Queen opens with a wedding turning into village-wide carnage as Lord Arakor's forces slaughter everyone, enslave the groom, and brutally assault the bride's younger sister, before 3 surviving women launch a revenge mission straight into the tyrant's city wearing basically leather dental floss. Roger Corman produced this in Argentina as part of his low-budget sword and sorcery assembly line, shooting and punishing heat with basically no safety protocols, creating conditions where the cast's real physical suffering became inseparable from what audiences saw on screen. What made this distinctly 80s exploitation was how it delivered exactly what video rental audiences wanted. Graphic violence, constant nudity, revenge scenarios, without pretending to be anything more sophisticated than pure genre thrills designed for late-night cable and VHS. Lana Clarkson became a cult icon as Queen Amethea through sheer commitment to physically demanding material, particularly an infamous torture rack sequence that became one of the most notorious scenes in 80s sword and sorcery for its unflinching depiction of suffering. The mostly female warrior cast shot in Argentina formed tight bonds to handle intense content and uncomfortable costumes in thorny terrain, with actresses including future director Kat Shea often ad-libbing lines that added unexpected personality to roles that could have been completely one-dimensional. Dawn Dunlap, playing traumatized Sister Taramis, had to portray severe psychological damage through emotionally exhausting takes, while the low-budget reality meant constant dehydration and blistered skin from skimpy costumes during shoots that stretched into grueling nights. UK censors hacked out over 5 minutes of graphic violence and sexual content, while Australia banned it entirely during the video nasties panic, pushing uncut versions into underground tape trading networks where it became forbidden treasure among genre fans. The film courted controversy specifically for its explicit depiction of violence against women, including the torture sequences and assault content, leading to moral panic from parents groups who saw it as particularly disturbing exploitation, even by 80s standards. What made Barbarian Queen stick in memory was its willingness to go further than most sword and sorcery films in depicting brutal content, creating a reputation as one of the more extreme entries in a genre already known for pushing boundaries. Deathstalker sends a sword-swinging warrior through tournaments where champions literally hack each other apart, competing for throne access and harem privileges, delivering Roger Corman-style exploitation that pushed every boundary while operating on spare change budgets. The film embraced intentionally campy sword and sorcery style, with lead actor Rick Hill committing fully to cheesy heroics, despite rushed shooting schedules. His enthusiasm for the genre, helping create the exact kind of unpretentious adventure that defined direct-to-video fantasy. What made Deathstalker feel 80s was its complete lack of restraint. Gratuitous nudity, over-the-top violence, medieval settings mixed with anachronistic elements, all delivered with zero pretense of being anything except pure entertainment for audiences who knew exactly what they wanted. Director James Usbardalati faced constant creative clashes with producers demanding more nudity and exploitation to capitalize on the Conan-sparked sword and sorcery craze, leading to a final product that prioritized commercial elements over coherent storytelling. The film featured extensive nudity and revealing costumes throughout, creating the charged atmosphere typical of low-budget fantasy productions where getting marketable content on screen mattered more than actor comfort or narrative consistency. Extended combat sequences left the cast dealing with brutal sun exposure in costumes, offering zero protection, with genuine falls and dehydration becoming routine hazards on Argentina locations that nobody really acknowledged officially. Distribution triggered immediate censorship battles across multiple countries, with studios cutting explicit content for R ratings, while UK censors excised violence and Australia banned it completely. German boards pulled VHS copies during video nasties panic. The more authorities tried suppressing it, the more fans sought out uncut versions through underground trading, inadvertently creating perfect word-of-mouth marketing that turned censorship into badge of honor for genre completists. Looking back, what's striking is how Deathstalker got completely banned for content that barely registers compared to what streams freely now, revealing how dramatically cultural standards shifted in just 4 decades. Flash Gordon reimagined the comic strip hero through Queen's bombastic rock opera aesthetic, creating this deliriously campy space opera where a quarterback rocketed to planet Mongo unites Hawkmen and Tree People against Emperor Ming's tyranny in primary colors and zero subtlety. What made Flash Gordon the most 80s thing imaginable was Queen's legendary soundtrack, turning every scene into glam rock grandeur, their involvement adding theatrical energy that perfectly matched the film's refusal to take itself seriously while still committing completely to the spectacle. The production invited Queen to set unexpectedly, causing friction since the director was blasting Pink Floyd at the time, but their contribution became inseparable from the film's identity in ways that defined how 80s fantasy embraced contemporary music aesthetics. Sam J. Jones clashed constantly with producer Dino De Laurentiis over creative differences, eventually refusing to return for post-production dubbing after getting hospitalized following an offset fight, leading to his voice being completely replaced without consent and his career effectively blackballed for decades. Brian Blessed brought tremendous energy as King Vultan, famously helping Max von Sydow find the right intensity for Ming by advising him to channel terrifying power through his hands, while his exuberant personality lightened tense moments during chaotic production. The costume designer refused to read the script and imposed her own eccentric vision that often conflicted with the director, contributing to production atmosphere as unpredictable as the film itself, though somehow the chaos worked. Countries like Singapore and Malaysia banded over imagery perceived as occult or too intense for family audiences, with ratings boards demanding edits to Ming's threatening ceremonies that often came too late for a sanitized release. What's remarkable is how Flash Gordon embraced pure camp decades before camp became acceptable in superhero cinema, finding audiences who loved its commitment to colorful absurdity without apology, making it feel almost revolutionary compared to the grim self-seriousness dominating modern genre filmmaking, where everything needs to be grounded and realistic. Krull throws medieval fantasy, alien invasions, mystical weapons, and space fortresses into one bizarre genre stew where Prince Colwyn assembles a misfit fellowship to storm the Black Fortress, rescue kidnapped Princess Lissa from the monstrous beast, and wield the legendary glaive to fulfill some ancient prophecy. Ken Marshall took on the stoic hero role, knowing it meant extensive horse riding, elaborately choreographed combat, and filming across hazardous iron desert terrain that pushed physical endurance to genuine limits under heavy medieval armor and absolutely brutal heat. Minor injuries accumulated steadily as he tried projecting mythic gravitas amid increasingly campy dialogue and elaborate special effects that felt more disorienting with each passing week. The ambitious visual effects proved revolutionary in concept, but notoriously temperamental in execution, with stop-motion animation requiring such painstaking frame-by-frame work that shooting schedules became completely unpredictable. Cast members spent hours waiting around for technical adjustments, watching crews struggle with inconsistent lighting on composite shots that demanded endless retakes, progressively increasing everyone's fatigue and fraying tempers. Lizette Anthony, as Princess Lissa, later recounted the intense psychological toll of filming extended abduction sequences in genuinely claustrophobic Black Fortress sets, surrounded by menacing beast animatronics that looked legitimately frightening, even knowing they were puppets. Multiple takes of captivity scenes where she had to project authentic terror while physically restrained in high-stress environments became mentally exhausting in ways that lingered well past production wrap. The film's absolute refusal to pick a lane, genre-wise, initially confused audiences expecting something more tonally consistent, but decades later that same fearless genre mashing became its greatest asset. What seemed like a confused mess in 1983 now looks like bold experimentation, suggesting the real problem wasn't the film's ambition, but audiences not yet ready for fantasy that refused to stay in its lane. The Ice Pirates imagines a drought-stricken future where water becomes the ultimate prize, following cocky pirate Captain Jason and his crew, including android Milo, through increasingly absurd combinations of sword fights and rocket battles to rescue a princess from her tyrannical father's fortress. What made this peak 80s sci-fi was its gleeful mixing of space western aesthetics, pirate adventure tropes, and relentless slapstick comedy without ever pretending to be anything sophisticated, just embracing complete absurdity as its guiding principle. Robert Urich, known for serious television work, took a surprising comedic turn, but struggled balancing broad physical humor with heroic presence. His method acting instincts clashing with the exaggerated camp tone co-stars leaned into enthusiastically. The production earned notoriety for physical comedy accidents, including a stuntman accidentally dropped from rigging during sword fight rehearsal, escaping major injury but forcing immediate safety. Rewrites that became legendary behind-the-scenes stories. Elaborate practical effects for spaceship interiors and water-themed props malfunction constantly, unexpectedly soaking actors mid-take and causing delays that somehow created the chaotic energy working perfectly on screen, despite frustrating everyone involved. Cast and crew bonded intensely over shared technical disasters, maintaining humor through constant setbacks that transformed into enduring convention anecdotes about the passion driving low-budget sci-fi when enthusiasm compensated for limited resources. Mary Crosby experienced unexpected cult appreciation as Princess Karina, with convention attendees quoting her lines verbatim and giving her niche fame extending well beyond previous soap opera recognition, proof that even small roles in beloved cult films create lasting legacies. The film's aggressive commitment to looking ridiculous, swinging cutlasses on spaceship decks, treating interstellar travel like Caribbean piracy, never once taking itself seriously, completely baffled audiences expecting straightforward space action in 1984. Nobody knew what to do with a movie this committed to its own absurd premises without hedging into self-aware irony, but that's exactly why it endures among fans who appreciate films brave enough to be completely silly without apology before everything needed to be dark and gritty to be taken seriously.